All right. And can everybody see my screen? See the presentation? Great. Well, thank you all for spending time with us on a Friday, Friday afternoon, nonetheless. You all know who I am at this point. I actually think now would be a great time to give a shout out. We just brought on a new fellow. So Nicola is going to be with us for the next 8 months, working on our roadmap and some storytelling. And we're really excited to have her here. I'm going to see if I can pull her into this work a little bit. And so she's here to learn about what this project's about, just like you all. And just wanted to make sure you all got a chance to see her face. And let's see. Okay. And so, yeah, I can go ahead and get started. I also have Julie with me and a couple others from CNHP also on the call to help answer questions. And feel free to just interject at any point and let us know if you have questions. No need to wait until the end. Julie.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin, and welcome, Nicola, and welcome everybody to our second webinar in this series. We're really pleased to have you with us and that you are willing and to help us with this work. We're really excited to begin this new partnership with KIC and all of you. So we just wanted to recap the December 15th webinar briefly. In that webinar, that recording has been made available. If you didn't receive it, please let Caitlin know. But really in that webinar, we covered just our high-level goals for the statewide survey that CNHP was funded through many partners, but primarily through GoCo. And so those webinar slides cover our goals and what this partnership is all about and the role that KIC is playing, the role that CNHP plays in this partnership, as well as the role that you all will be playing. And so as a reminder, we're focused on the land trusts that are serving the 2026 counties seen here in this map in green. And so we will, I know some of you are statewide, so you'll be working with us in future years as well, but we just want to make sure you know that this is open to all of you at any time. We just want to keep these partnerships ongoing. And so even though the focus of this is 2026, if there's something that bleeds into 2027 and beyond, that is just okay. We're good with that. So today, what we'll cover is the timeline for the outreach that we're asking of you and really look at those dates and make sure that you're understanding of those and that you're able to accommodate those dates. So Caitlin will be cover that timeline in a little more detail. I'll dive into the outreach activities and how you'll go about that, and then the resources that we'll be providing you to help support this work. And then finally, Caitlin has some more information on how you'll invoice, what those activities can be, and how you'll go about that so that you can be reimbursed for your expenses. So next slide, Caitlin.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. So if you did see the recording or you were on the previous webinar, you probably recognize a slide similar to this. Just wanted to give you a high-level overview of the timeline, what it looks like, and then we can go into the individual pieces and what each portion looks like. But this project should take most of your time between now and maybe mid-March. It could go a little bit beyond that, just depending on the response rate of landowners. And if a landowner gets back to you after mid-March, we'd still love to know about that. CNHP might not have the ability to get them on their list this year, or maybe they'll have an opening later. And as we have mentioned in the past, 2028 will be our year to go back and kind of fill in the gaps and get areas that were missed. And so we could even probably get them on the list then. So we don't want conversations to kind of quit after mid-March if you still haven't heard back from landowners. That's okay. Just let us know. But yeah, so after this webinar, CNHP is currently finalizing lists of priority properties they'd like to access. And I will be sharing lists with each of you based on who is the easement holder. So, I'm currently sitting in the COL office, so I'll use them as an example. If COL is the holder, I'll send you a list of all the properties that are within, that are held by you. And you will respond to me with kind of the properties that you are most interested in reaching out to. So that's the kind of late part of January, goes into February. Mid-February, I'm going to share those final lists with each of you. We don't want duplicates. We don't want two land trusts reaching out to the same landowner. So if there is a chance that there's some overlap, especially in the unconserved properties, which we'll speak more about in a few minutes, I'll let you know. And that's when you can start reaching out. And then the timeline really depends on the speed at which landowners reply. So that takes you into early March. And Henry, I see you have your hand raised.
You just answered one of my questions, which was you had mentioned properties with conservation easements, but it could be non-eased properties, right? It's just is there a focus on properties with easements though, or?
So it's both. There will be two sheets shared with all of you. We're going to look at properties that are conserved, that are held by land trust, but then there will also be some properties that CNHP needs contact for landowners for, and maybe that property is one that your land trust has been trying to conserve for years, and you'd love a reason to reach out to that landowner for some reason, or maybe you just happen to know the person who lives there. So we're going to have a list of unconserved properties that you can also reach out to. We're hoping this might be a good excuse for you to connect with them and maybe start another conversation.
And then my follow-up question was, and this is the ecologist nerd in me, was how are you selecting these properties? Is it based on, I imagine it's probably a variety of different parameters, but yeah, could you give a little insight?
Julie, I
Yeah,
think
I'll
that's
just
more
speak to
for
that really quickly. We're going to dive into that in a little bit, and I'm going to call upon Dave to probably give some more examples of that. But our biologists go through a selection process, and so he can speak to that a little bit more when we get to that slide, because that'll be something we want to provide you high-level information about what those targets are and what that habitat is, so that when you're contacting someone, you have a sense of what that is. So maybe
Cool.
when we get a couple more slides down, we can talk about that in a little more detail, and Dave can provide better insight on that, since he's a biologist himself and he's been with CNHP much longer and understands that process.
Very cool. Thanks a lot.
Great. So now I wanted to kind of dive into the individual pieces of that timeline so you know what to expect. So first, we're going to be sharing with you priority landowner lists, and these will be split out based on the holder of the easement. So COL is going to receive the list of properties that COL holds, and Malt will receive the properties that Malt holds, and then we will have that other list of properties that are not currently conserved. And we just want to see if anybody in our membership possibly has connection to any of those and would be willing to reach out to those landowners. Or maybe it's a good excuse for you to reach out to that landowner that you've wanted to conserve their property forever. You just haven't necessarily had the reason to connect with them. And so the type of information you'll receive is, this is just kind of a snippet. And Julie will go more into this in a little bit. She'll share her screen. But the parcel number, who's the owner, the address, the city, and zip code, and that sort of information, the things that would let you know if you have a connection to them or not. And at first, we really just want you to let Keep It Colorado know which properties are you interested in contacting, especially for those unconserved properties. If there's multiple people that are interested in reaching out, we don't want that landowner being contacted, 3 times with 3 different land trusts. So there will be a phase after you submit your interested properties to me where I'll have to go through and make sure that only one person's reaching out to each landowner. I'll respond to you with your final list, and then that's when you can start outreach. Julie, is there anything else you'd add to this slide?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that this is just a snippet. As you can imagine, these spreadsheets can get pretty big with all the information, the parcel data and stuff that we're able to download and collect. And so, like I said, I'll share screen later so you can see more of these fields, but there'll be a column for easement holder. There'll be a column for adding phone numbers and emails and all of that. But we're given, when we get this county level data, we're only given so much information. And so you can see, like, when it says BLM, what's that mean? And obviously that's a public property, but if there's a private land owner listed there, again, sometimes we're just met with really vague information, maybe a trust name, maybe multiple last names for family members. It can really vary. And so this is where we are really hoping that you guys know your areas really well and know them the best. So you're able to maybe recognize a last name or initial in a first name and know who that person is. And so these lists the owner names can be very vague. They can be also very specific. So if they have an easement holder, chances are you already know them because you're already connected with them. But the ones that don't, those are the ones that can get really kind of confusing and messy. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned this in our earlier webinar about these are some of the materials that you'll receive from us, and they'll will all be available in the shared folder that Caitlin mentioned earlier so that you can easily download them and use which pieces that work best for your situation. The first one is you'll receive a phone email template. This is just a general overview of CNHP and the project and how you are helping coordinate these efforts through this partnership. And so it'll involve that, but then it'll also go into a little bit more detail about participation being voluntary and talk a little bit about how data will be collected. And so really high level kind of communication piece that you can use as an introduction when you're first reaching out to landowners. And then we do have hard copies or printed or digital copies of this brochure that you see here. And this provides some goals for the project, who the partners are that we're working with, this county survey map. And it's just used mainly as a talking piece, maybe when you're headed out in the field to visit with landowners. This might be something that you want to take with you so that you have something to present with them so they can keep it. But we also understand that you'll want this in a digital format as well. So we'll have that for you as well. So you can use that as a tool when you're emailing. The frequently asked questions, those will be anything from who is CNHP to how do we deal with data collection? What happens if we find an endangered species on the property and how that will be dealt with. We have some other ones that we're developing, but like how will this data be used to support this project? And so a lot around data distribution and access and timelines, but those are a sense of what you can expect with the frequently asked questions so that you have an easy answer and a consistent answer from us and can call upon those. Of course, if there's anything specific that doesn't fall and you want to ask, you can route all those questions through Caitlin and we'll be in touch and can help support those questions as need be. We'll also be able to provide you high-level survey maps. We have data license agreements about which data can be shared and at the obscurity level of that. But we've found that some of our partners in the past appreciated having at least some sort of map showing what our target areas are for that particular county. Those will probably be based on county or regional partnership. We'll look at that and see what makes most sense. We've done it both ways in the past. So those, again, will just be very high-level maps, but people have asked for those in the past. So we want to make sure to include those. And then we'll also include our data access our landowner access and data sharing agreements. We have two separate agreements, and these are really just for your reference. We want you to be able to refer to those if you're getting questions about that. There's always a way to contact our environmental review coordinator on staff at CNHP if need be, because some of those questions can get a little technical. We'll try to make sure that you can answer those or Caitlin, but if a landowner so wishes to reach out to our staff, that's fine too. We're definitely okay with that and able to help. But Those aren't something that you'll have to manage. We'll take care of that on our end. It's moving to a digital format through Adobe Sign that landowners will be signing those agreements. So this is really just for you to reference and to not worry about collecting those or making sure they're signed off on. So, but we wanted you to be aware of that for full transparency with communicating with the landowners. And then we'll walk through here an example of how you'll track those outreach efforts in the spreadsheets that will be in that shared folder. I think next slide, please. So this gives you a sense on the right of all the different fields that will be likely included in the spreadsheet. I want to review this one more time with our data coordinator who's working on downloading all of our priority areas. We're testing a new process this year, and so we're making sure that all of those items are included, but this gives you a sense of the things that you will receive. It'll already be populated with the owner name, the parcel number, physical address, mailing address, city, state, zip, county, easement holder name, number of acres, CNHP targets and habitat, the timing that our biologists would like to visit the property, and then any access details that might be important that we'll want you to record. Well, I should back up and I should say that's pretty much where it stops of the information we'll be providing. And then the remaining is where we will want your input. And so I think what I'll do is move over to share my screen really quick, if you're okay with that. Just move over. Can everybody see that? The spreadsheet up here?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just an example of, we'll get an owner name based on county records, parcel number based on county records, addresses. Some of this is pulled from our COMAP layer that some of you might be familiar with for conserved lands throughout the state. So that's how we will get the land trust name. Acres is pulled from a few different sources. Some of it is the parcel acreage, and some of it is our targeted biologist, their targeted inventory. It's known as a TIA, the acres that they're looking to visit. We'll have these CNHP targets and habitat, and I'll come back to this at the end because I want Dave to speak a little bit about that and how those, to answer your question, Henry, on how those are determined. But then, like I mentioned, that survey timing notes, so we know if the phenology of a certain plant is in early spring, then we'll want to make sure that that's when our biologists are headed to the property versus maybe it's late July. And so those things will be provided to you. Access details is something where, like, if you're visiting with a landowner and we want to make sure there's a particular road gate that they need to be through, go through, then we'll want to make those notes. Of course, a lot of them probably have cattle that they're moving, and so making sure there's notes about closing gates or whatnot, really anything that the biologist might need to know from your conversation with a landowner. The phone number and the email are kind of the big picture here of these are the things we cannot draw from county level data. We really rely on you guys to provide that information. And if that's something, then we'll need to, our biologists will need that to follow up to coordinate field logistics. So phone and or email, the date you contacted them and any notes. And then this here will be filled in later by CNHP staff. So this is a sense of what this looks like for something that is already has a conservation easement tied to it. Then moving over, we will have a separate list, and this will be a mix of two things. It will be a mix of lands that are unconserved that we think in your area that you might know these people. So there's that. But then there's also the ones that you might know personally and want to have a conversation with them, that they would be a good applicant for a conservation easement and that they would also be good for the statewide survey. And so this spreadsheet will have a lot less information because we'll be relying on you to fill out those names of who that person is. You might have personal numbers, you might not. And so a lot of this will just be filled out as much as possible by you, since you're the one that's making that suggestion or might have that information. So a lot of the same overlap, but again, these will be finalized and before they're shared with you so that they make sense and make it as easy for you as possible. But the big thing is tracking your communication with a landowner. Is really important for us to know if they were interested or not interested. Maybe, there's not at this time, but there's potential. So it's really tracking that progress as you go and letting us know who and who isn't interested, or if you had trouble getting a hold of someone, or, oh, maybe someone's in-laws down in, neighbors down the road are interested. We've had that through kind of referral processes. So it's really keeping track of those as well. And then I will stop sharing. If we could go back, Caitlin, to the slide that we were on. And I'll just make note that we do understand that all the land trusts have different capacity, and your time commitment for this work will really depend on the approach of how you go about this. Some, might take longer because you have more people on your list, or because you are spending more time out in the field having conversations versus email. It's really kind of dependent on what you have capacity for. And we are truly happy with whatever you can do for us. We're never going to be able to visit all the people on all the lists this year. We're not going to have the capacity for that. So if you can only reach out to a handful, and that's perfectly acceptable, and we will be pleased with that. It's really whatever you have time and capacity to do for us. And so I just want to know that we had a previous questions submitted to us before this webinar asking about that. So we want to just make sure that you guys know that there's some flexibility in that, and that we're just grateful that you're willing to help us. So I think that's all I have on that slide.
Hey, Julie,
Caitlin,
can I
did
ask a
you have?
question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's kind of related to your last comment. I'm just trying to get a sense of the scale of contact that you're hoping for. I mean, I'm sure it's going to vary from the bigger land trust to the smaller land trust and the service areas that we have, but how many landowners, like for my little land trust up in Estes Park, how many landowners would you anticipate that you would prefer that we reach out to?
Well, I haven't seen your list yet, so I don't know how many priority properties our biologists have identified on properties that you hold. And so I don't have a sense of that, but if it's only a few, we're happy with that, because this survey is covering public land and private land, and this is the first time this has been ever done. And so last year we had some really good success with private landowners, but we also understand it varies by geographic regions. Some people just, maybe conservation easements aren't as popular or well received in certain areas, and so that might play a role. Or the timing just might not work, or they want to think about it. And so it really, I hate to say this, but it really just depends. And so that's why, if at the end of the day, you give us only a couple names, we're going to be pleased with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that helps. Thank you. And then in terms of the end of our role is, once we have made initial contact and we get a yes, hopefully from a landowner, and we pass their contact information on to you, is our role as a land trust over with those individuals?
That's a really good question, and that's up to you. We're going to have a comment section for that for you to indicate if you want to still be included in future correspondence. We've had some partners this last year who wanted to stay involved in the conversation as we were reaching out to and coordinating. And so we are happy to keep you in the loop. We're excited if you wanted to join us in the field when we actually go visit, you're more than welcome to do that. There's many different flavors that could take. And so if you simply just want to provide us with an email and a phone number and say, these people are interested, you guys do all the follow-up, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to be that main point of contact, and then we work through you to coordinate the visits and everything that the biologists do before they prepare for a trip, that's fine too.
Right.
I think that's a
Thank
really
you.
good point, Jeffrey. I think knowing certain landowners might be leery of like interacting with like new partners. I'm wondering if maybe in the form we want to include a field, or maybe it wasn't there. I kind of glossed over it, but maybe we want to include a field or a place for a land trust to indicate whether or not it would make sense for them to remain the liaison between Kiva, Colorado, and CNHP, or whether it could be direct. The contact could be directly taken like between them thereafter, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, we will get that added. I started on that and I didn't quite know the best wording for how to, but we want to be respectful of your relationship with them and keep you included as much as you would like to be. And Caitlin, maybe before we move on to this slide, I might call on Dave to speak a little bit to answer Henry's question about determining species and habitats and whatnot. And Henry, you might need to repeat your question for Dave. Or Dave, are you
I
good?
just, I believe the way I phrased it was my nerdy. I said, I'm curious to know what the process is for selecting properties from an ecological perspective. Like what is going into that recipe, into that black box.
Oh, Henry, this is a nerd safe space right here. That's the world we live in. And so these things are selected starting with our tracking list. So those are the species that we've determined through empirical data are actually rare in Colorado. And those can be globally rare or just rare within the state of Colorado. And then within a geography, we'll look at where we think we might be missing information, where might more of these things be. And some species we have a really good sense of, and others we don't. And like just thinking about your geography, the Frasera coloradensis is almost its entire global range is on private land. We haven't been on all of those private lands. We know there's a ton of habitat we haven't looked at yet. So we really think that there's more of that stuff out there than we have on the maps. And so we can use maps with geology and vegetation and ground cover to help us identify where we think more habitat is on the ground. And in the sweetest looking spots, irrespective of land ownership, we'll draw a polygon around that and say, this is where we really think we need to go. And that's based purely on biology. And then that's when the rubber hits the road with you all, because then when we look at parcels within those polygons, it's like, whoa, check this out. These are the properties that would be really great to get on and have a look for these things. And then that's why we need your help, because it's pretty tough to get connected with those landowners once we get to that stage.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Dave. I think that definitely clarifies it for me. And I wish I could have been a fly in the wall on the meetings of like trying to like pinpoint the properties. That must have been such a fun process. But no, yeah, I love it all. I love that it's driven by by trying to garner more information about understudied species and with a focus on RT&E species. Very cool. And thanks for the insight.
Nerd safe space. I love it. Well, I have a slightly less exciting topic to talk about now, and that's turning to probably the very important part, and that is invoicing. How do you actually get paid for this work? We want to make this as easy as humanly possible for you all. We don't want you to spend tons of time drafting invoices, and so I wanted to make it as easy as possible. So we're going to share a template with you. Basically, it's going to look very similar to this. This is just an example sheet where I filled in some numbers and names to give you a sense of what you will be doing. If the box is green, that's the information I'm looking for you to fill in. So it'll already be pre-populated with the hourly rate. We're doing $50 an hour. It'll have the 2026 federal mileage amount in case you were to decide, I want to go out and visit with this landowner in person. I think that's the best way to get their attention. Or I'm already heading out to do some stewardship work on their property. I might as well talk to them on the way. You can bill some of that mileage to this project. Or if you needed to stay overnight somewhere and you're going to be talking about this project, you could bill some of your time, for lodging or meals to this project. And so it's already pre-populated with those federal rates. You'll fill in your own information around, where will we be sending the money to, an invoice number, and it also has little comments on it so you can go in and, hover over it and it'll give you some direction on what invoice number are we looking for, or, do you enter it in hours or dollars? And so some of the things that you can bill for are things like this. So, you're on this webinar right now. Your time is not nothing to us. And so you can bill for that. You are going to be also billing for reviewing those landowner lists, the time you spend looking to see which ones you might contact. The one we expect will be the largest on here is that third line, landowner outreach and tracking. All the time that you spend calling them, emailing them, hopping on the phone when they give you a call back. Just do your best to give, obviously it's very hard to, measure the amount of time you spend on a phone, but, do your best to give us a rough estimate. I already covered mileage and lodging. And then finally, the time you spend putting together this invoice, which I would hope to be quite small because this should be pretty straightforward and easy for you all. We don't want this to take very much time. And so basically, once you fill in those green boxes and it's pre-populated, it should give you a total. You're just going to download this, send it to me, and the payment will come from Keep It Colorado since CNHP has already passed the money on to us. So hopefully that'll be pretty easy and straightforward, having you submit those once a month. And yes, the only other thing I wanted to cover here was if you do end up incurring any costs for food or lodging, please do submit those receipts as well, just so our finance team doesn't ask questions whenever we pass it along for them to hit pay. So, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully it makes sense. I will note this is our first time doing this. So we have things to learn along the way. And so if there's anything that we could do to make this more streamlined, if there's columns like Henry, you suggested that we might add to our spreadsheets to make things easier or make you feel better about reaching out to landowners or having CNHP contact them, let us know. We'd love to find ways to improve this. This is the first year. We'll be doing it again next year. And then obviously 2028 will be the year that they go back and fill in the gaps. And so there's definitely room for improvement. But curious if anybody has any more questions.
I'm just curious about how you share the information. If you plan to share the information, I'm just imagining at the end of the year, if you've got, a dozen land trusts involved and there's 100 landowners have been contacted, do you plan to circle back to us all and say, this is what we discovered, or we didn't discover anything new? I don't know what the results will be. That's the journey of discovery, but curious if you plan to do any information sharing at the end of the year.
I love that idea, and the answer to that can be yes. I think we'll do our best to keep you involved along the way. After our team visits a property, they do follow up with an email to the landowner with any findings. And so we can make sure you're copied on that. The biologists are the best ones to send that email just because they're able to articulate very specifically what was found. And a lot of times they're able to communicate with the landowner directly at that time if they're on site with them. But we can make sure that you're included in that. And then we can plan for a recap at the end of the field season if that's of interest to the group.
It's of interest to me.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Henry.
Henry.
All right, I'm just blowing it up today. I'm curious to know if there are do you guys know of other efforts to incentivize landowner outreach in the past? Have they been successful? And would it potentially make sense to do like a case study of this? I feel like if this is a successful effort, maybe this becomes a model that we then use throughout the state, not only for getting CNHP biologists on there, but for finding landowners who are excited about like stewardship and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. It feels like this could be really useful. I'm just curious to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll respond to that first, and then maybe Caitlin and Dave have some input, but I agree. I have been thinking about that. I'm not aware of any other models out there. And so this is really exciting. And I actually see this as a model for our entire network of heritage programs. A lot of the other states don't necessarily work on private lands like we do, from my understanding. I think some do, but not to this extent. And so this may be a model that other states are interested in following as well. So yeah, there's a really exciting opportunity there for that. And I'll be curious on Dave's and Caitlin's thoughts if they are aware of anything like this.
Oh, I think this is completely novel. And yeah, I agree, Julie. It's well said.
Can we, and by we, I use the non-royal we, not myself. Can you guys could we collect some data on this? Because I feel like this model, it could be so powerful. You know what I mean? As a model of engagement, like incentivizing. I don't know. I think there's like more to it than just this, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, I don't have the bandwidth to like collect those data or analyze those data, but like maybe a partnership with a social scientist, like something to think about. I think it's really cool.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah.
I love it.
Your
I got
science
lots of
side is showing.
ideas. I can't bring them to fruition, but anyways, yeah, something to think about. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, much to learn from this. Any other questions? Well, great. Julie, Dave, anything else?
Maybe we should get a service learning group of students to work on this towards Henry's question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it will be really interesting to see at the end of the project too, just our compounding impact. And there's Colorado's a big state, as you know, there's way more than what we can accomplish in this time frame. And so we hope to keep this work going. We've invested a lot of time and resources in getting this going. And so we hope at CNHP that this is something that we continue well beyond the 5-year scope of the project.
Since this is a nerd safe space, I'm looking for another nerd. I'm about to hire a stewardship and restoration manager at Estes Valley Land Trust. So just be on the lookout. I'm going to hopefully submit that job description to the LTA website and through Keep It Colorado. But all of you, I'm sure, have great contacts, maybe colleagues that are looking to have a change in career. Please help me share that job description when you see it later this year.
Will do. That's so exciting, Jeffrey. Great. Well, I don't think we need to keep any more of your time. If you have questions, reach out to me. You'll be hearing from me in the coming weeks, letting you know. And I believe everyone on this call is probably who I have as the main point person for your organization working on this. But if you need me to connect with other people on your teams, please let me know and I can easily adjust. So thanks, everyone. Have a great Friday.
Thanks, everybody.